more informal chance for people to network and talk to each other if they want to hang around, but obviously if people need to go, then that's fine. For me, I think a key point from what Nick was saying is, will big society open up opportunities? And we need to see that in the context of those key tests that we've seen already, about the work that is already going on, about values, about government being ready to implement what it says are its own policies, and about support for relationship-based community action. So any questions, points, anything that people want to contribute to the mix? Yeah.
I have a general question, thinking about the future. We're talking about 1 year on, but I'm thinking about what's the time scale we should be aiming for here. We have a government that says it's going to be a term, 5-year government to work, don't they all? But this one's said that quite a lot. What kind of timescale should we actually be working to? There's a number of things that come out today about the role of government as a whole. I do a fair amount of work with government. You go to one department, you get one answer, you go to another, you get different. There has to be some consistency across government. That's been identified as a problem. At what point in the forward timescale is that going to be overcome as a problem? For example, the role of local government, bless them, constantly under change, potentially in the driving seat, but having to do with cuts. When is that going to be resolved? Is that potentially a problem? The economic system, well, let's not go into that, but I've heard that mentioned as potentially a big block on some of these things. So my question it's quite an open question for people, is when do we actually need to see some of these things being solved? Because you can't wait 5 or 10 years for them just because they might get solved.
Yeah. I'll kick off just because I can. I remember when the Blair government introduced the National Strategy for Neighbourhood Renewal, and it said that this was about 12 years ago, that within 10 to 20 years nobody would be seriously disadvantaged by where they live. And I think it's fair to say that ambition has not been realised. So in terms of timescale, I think what I would look for is the point about values and about intentions. And I would want to see real evidence that government was adopting the values of community development very, very early on, because circumstances might frustrate intentions, but circumstances don't frustrate your values. The circumstances don't stop you trying to move in the right direction, and so I think that's something that we should look at very, very carefully and see whether the rhetoric is being matched with action. I think what I would also want to see very, very quickly is a recognition that relationship-based community development is something that government is going to support, not just with words, but with real resources and with real encouragement to local government to put resources in. And that's not going to happen if government doesn't resource local government properly. One point on local government, I wouldn't echo Jess's view of local government. I think local government could be a real supporter of community work, and we should look for real alliances with local government, with people who really do get this in local government. And I think in future local government could be one of the strongest backers of real local community development. But there are a lot of people in local government who really need to get their heads around some of this stuff, and they need to do it very, very quickly. So, Jonathan, do you want to, Toby?
I think everything that's going on at the moment encourages us to look at the short term. I think it's very, very difficult to look beyond the kind of challenges that we face today. But it's critical that we do. I don't think that the changes that the government are kind of at least aspiring to, or the vision for big society is going to happen in anything approaching a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think it's a really long-term change. interesting that Julian refers to neighbourhood renewal and the generation, the change that they want to see over generation. Part of my assessment as to why this government is kind of supporting the programme of community organisers is that they saw how Labour were thwarted with their ambition because they encountered bureaucracy and resistance within the system and outside the system that stopped the kind of neighbourhood renewal ambition being realised. And that's why I think it's a deliberate attempt to inject creative disruption into the system through community organisers. But I think it's a long-term change. If we don't focus on the long-term, on shaping the long-term, there will be others who don't share our values and don't share our vision. And the huge corporates who stand to gain a great deal by hoovering up public service contracts will be waiting in the wings and rubbing their hands with glee, and they will be shaping the future. So it's critical that we resist all the pressures on us to look at the short term and focus on shaping the long term future.
Okay. Well, okay. Anyone else? Yeah, that.
I'm a local resident, amongst other things. My question is really about social enterprises and the role of mutuals and cooperatives further down the line. I think it's all very well if you can, if an asset-based community organisation. And I think that's all very well if those assets can bring in some kind of an income which can then be used to support the local community. But in many cases, certainly in an area like West London where property prices are so high, that's not really the case. So I guess if it's to reflect, to ask the panel what they think about mutuals and how that might go forward.
David, do you want to pick that?
Well, I'm a member of the cooperative. I bank with Nationwide. You know, I believe in mutuals. I think that they have. I think what they do is they give people an equity stake in what happens because the entities aren't serving shareholders. Are they? So in many instances, I think that they are better for people than private companies because they're answerable to not kind of delivering the best quality to the consumer, but delivering the best return for their shareholders. So I think that they are kind of quite a positive thing, and I think it's important that we take advantage of the current government's interest in them. But there is no guarantee that a social enterprise or a cooperative, a mutual workers kind of an employee-owned business are going to deliver a better service. They might, and they bring other values. So actually, I prefer to see them than somebody else. But anyone who's been, no, this is going to get tweeted, so I'm not going to say it. But you know, there are examples of large social enterprises who are kind of on a par with you know what the council were doing. So it's not a guarantee of improvement, but what it does do is ensure that the profit, the surplus, is locked into community benefit. That's got to be a good thing if the alternative is paying shareholders. But I think with social enterprise, there's a lot of talk about social enterprise, very sexy. Government likes it because it reduces their liabilities to support the sector. But there are a lot of instances where social enterprises are not particularly social and not particularly enterprising. So, you know, I think we need to kind of be a bit honest about the quality of what is purported to be social enterprise. I'd also like to see more socially responsible business. You know, let's not just talk about kind of social enterprise as a model. Actually, I'd like to see the corporates being a little bit more socially responsible too. Sorry, I could rant for hours on that.
Okay, thanks. Jonathan?
Well, I mean, I clearly, in my view of experience, mutuals or community-based organisations, if they want to provide some services, then they need some assets and an income stream to do so. The more valuable the assets, the more flexibility you've got in managing and diversifying some of those activities and assets, the more likely you are to be able to sustain the sort of proper community investment over a long period of time. Now, then I think the way that you keep that, if you like, doing the right thing, and correct is through democratic accountability. The Welsh model, you know, just is, it's accountable to the people to whom services are being provided. Now, if it wasn't, it was some sort of broader co-op thing, you know, and it had lost that local thing or something, you know, it's going to be less successful. So really, I don't think this is to do with models so much as, well, it's principles. Democratic, accountable ownership of common assets. That's what I'd call it, very straightforward. The more of that there is, then the more it's able to support social enterprise, whatever that might be. No doubt it's the blur between what we might regard as community and public service provision and private enterprise. But surely it must only be a good thing if there are more locally democratically accountable organisations.